Welcome. This is the day when I start my YouTube adventure, and this is my first ever public video upload. My name is Adrian Radoi, and the content on this channel will be mostly related to personal development. And I would like to share in this first clip um, my personal transformation journey and the most important lessons that I learned from it. I think the most important lesson that I learned is that our mind is not our enemy, and our mind is our best friend. It can harm us, but it can also become the most reliable ally that we can possibly have and we can possibly imagine in the end. It took me a while to just realize that I had absolutely no gap between my thoughts and my very own identity, which means that I never really questioned the nature of my thoughts. They were my thoughts ultimately, and I thought that they are just normal and I have to take them for granted. Because I was forced somehow to go within because of very challenging external situations in my life, I went down the traditional spiritual path, if you want, where I discovered mindfulness, and I realized after a while that I actually have a choice, that there is a possibility to look at my thoughts from the outside in a way, to not identify with them. At the beginning, as you can imagine, it was maybe just a glimpse. It was maybe a second or even less when I was aware that thinking happened to me, like I want to say. I didn't know that I have actually a choice and I can, change much, but at least I knew that this is possible. And I'm pretty sure that most people run their whole lives without knowing that they can consciously alter the unconscious thinking patterns and the narratives in their minds. It is possible. And when I discovered that it can be easier and easier with practice to actually create this kind of conscious gap in which I can decide to think about something else, not reject the thinking as such, not oppose to it, but simply choose to think about something else, it was very liberating. And I got addicted, if you want. I got hooked by this new discovery. And this discovery paved the way to a real transformation. And when I say real transformation, it's safe to say that if I look back at who I was 5 years ago, I don't recognize much anymore in that person. I became a different kind of person with different aspirations, different values. Um, well, not necessarily different values, but priorities which allow me now to commit to my values and do what I know I must be doing throughout the day without feeling overwhelmed, without overthinking, without over worrying about stuff, while still caring about my family, my work, my friends, my passion that I discovered along the way, which is doing this kind of talks and coaching people and mentoring people on personal development. And it's a glorious journey. um, Another very important lesson that it makes sense for me like only 1 year ago or so is that the most rewarding thing in life, in my opinion, is the reward that comes from becoming a better human being, a better person. The process of becoming is the best reward that I was able to find for myself up to this point. It beats anything material, right? If you think about it, if you want to have a certain amount of money or status or having certain relationships, you want that because of the promise behind them, right? You imagine that if you have certain amount of money, you would be able to spend them in going in luxurious vacations or buying a certain car or a certain house. And then you want the byproduct of having that kind of external circumstances in your life, right? You imagine having a sense of relief and peace of mind if only you would have certain assets in your life. Life would be much more easier, right? Well, yes and no. Um, yes, if you don't have money at all, for sure, life it's not easy. At the same time, having money does not necessarily mean that you will have a better, happier life, right? What's most important is to enjoy living, um, to be able to be present with your family, with your kids, to be really a pleasurable existence and a pleasurable presence for people around you, and especially towards yourself. Another lesson I learned is that the most important relationship that we can ever have and worth developing in life is the relationship to ourselves, because we get to spend with ourselves 100% of the time. And no matter how many good friends we have or close family members, if the relationship we have with ourselves is dysfunctional, nothing else matters in the end. And I can give you a concrete example for this. You can imagine someone who is like extremely rich with a lot of, high stakes relationships and um, everything you can imagine when you think of a successful person, spending the best holiday imaginable in Bali somewhere, but literally attacked by his own mind concerning things that are related to work and some businesses that are not going well, and the divorce he's going through, and the kids that he's not talking to him anymore, and the fact that he's approaching already old age, and looking back at his life, he didn't feel like really accomplished much except his wealth. And irrespective of that surrounding, of the fact that he's in Bali with a lot of other wealthy people enjoying a holiday that we mortals can only dream of, it's not very glamorous, right? That life is not ideal. And contrast it with a monk living in the Himalayas, in a cave for the past 5 years or so, and only eat some bread and some water and so on. I mean, that person is stripped away of any kind of worldly belongings or objects, and still his internal state, his mind, is his best ally. He is not being attacked and abused by his thoughts. He's in control of his own mind. He's in control of the experience that he has of life, irrespective of the fact that he's not in Bali and he's just in a cave, right? These are extreme examples. But you can see that ultimately it does not matter what kind of material belongings you have in terms of a guarantee that you will have a life well lived and you can enjoy it. Ultimately, what matters is that you find peace in the present moment, irrespective how the present moment presents itself. And that's also the promise of spirituality, right? The reason why people go to meditation retreats or dive into all sorts of Eastern philosophies is for this promise of a calm mind, of a peaceful existence, of being able to live with harsh external circumstances sometimes and not be lost in them. However, this traditional path is often not available to most people who live in the modern society, who have responsibilities, who have a lot of work, children to take care of, a lot of chores every day, cannot afford simply to go to an ashram in India and spend there 1 year to just, submit their mind or their ego into compliance and be able to just, have like a peaceful existence irrespective of how life looks like on the outside. Most of us, we don't have that opportunity. It was my path because I was forced into it, right? The challenging experience that I've been referring to culminated with me losing my mother exactly 1 year ago. And even though it was a very challenging period of my life, when I look back at it, that was the most amazing and transformative period of my life. Because now I can contextualize it from a place of deep fulfillment, of true joy, of experiencing life as a very proud and happy father and husband and son. And I would not trade it for anything. And there is deep peace in knowing that while you are confronting challenging situations, they might look like it's the end of the world. But if you simply are able to accept them as they present themselves, you will discover soon enough incredible lessons that would not have been available for you if you would have just run away from them, So that's another piece of advice. Be able to face whatever challenges you are being confronted with without judging the necessity of them being there. If they are there, it means that you need them. Because by the time you experience what is, ultimately, that experience is already manifested in your life. Your mind is simply looking at what's already present. If you want, the mind is always a bit out of phase with what's happening, with life itself, right? As biological organisms, we have a brain which has to compute information through our senses. There are neural activity, electrical activity, chemical activity in our brain, which allows us to make sense of what's out there. But ultimately, what's out there, by the time our mind interprets it, already happened, right? So the promise of spirituality is that you are able to see this, and you are able to realize that whatever happens, happens, and you cannot really change it as such. The only thing you can change and you can control is your interpretation of it. And if you adopt like a Stoic philosophy, for example, or if you want to, go through the traditional mindfulness path, eventually, ideally, you come to a position where you are able to just look at what happens with equanimity and don't mind what happens. Not that you don't care, but you don't mind. You don't have a judgment. You don't have an opinion. You don't start immediately to challenge and become defensive or offensive towards what is. You embrace what is, make it your own, because ultimately what is you, right? You, me, we are all an integral part of life. And with or without our mind's acceptance, life happens, right? And we happen as well, if you want, with life, because we are part of life itself. So as life goes on, we go on. The only problem comes from the fact that our mind adds this kind of overlay over what's happening and typically interprets the event from a narrow context, which most probably defaults to taking some negative outcome out of the situation, right? We don't like things to be the way they are. We always think that they can be better. And there is a better way to look at this, right? There is an alternative to the traditional path of spirituality. And I call it practical spirituality, if you want. And this is something that I came up with after reverse engineering my 5 years of personal transformation. I wanted to share with you what I learned from this experience without having to go through actual 4 years of struggle and pain and deep transformation, which in the end is never really pleasurable. It's not a pleasant experience while you are going through it. It's amazing once you are out of it and you look back, because you know how many things you learned, but it's not something that you would enjoy, right? I was forced to go through it, but now when I look back, I know that there is an alternative way to go about it. And there is an alternative to the traditional promise of spirituality. But about this, I will discuss with you in the next clip. For now, I just wanted to introduce myself and set the tone for the kind of discussions that we will be having on this channel from now on. Thank you for being here, and I hope you found this a bit valuable at least.